there's any public comment on non-agenda items. Hearing none, we will move on to item 3, continuing budget authority resolution. So I'll look to Erica, who can punt it to Dr. Bush if she wants.
Yes, I'm going to punt away. Dr. Bush, it's all you.
All right, and Alex just queued it up. This is a new resolution. It's the first time I've asked for one of these resolutions in the 27 years I've been doing this. As you recall from the budget update at the board meeting, the chancellor has changed the due dates for the tentative budget from July 1 to August 1. So we have this weird space in July where we are going to be spending money and technically do not have any authority to do so. So one of the things that various county councils and the CBOs have been working on across the state is this resolution. And where the board acknowledges that we're just going to roll the budget over and we're going to continue to spend and issue payrolls for 1 month before we adopt the tentative budget.
I think that was a clear and succinct explanation. Now, obviously, we are not going to approve that resolution because that requires full board.
Right.
We could, if you desire, say that recommend some language that we reviewed it and agree with presenting it to the full board for approval.
I'd appreciate that because this is not a routine matter like some of the other resolutions.
Are there any questions of the members about what the resolution says?
I have a question.
Okay.
Am I acknowledged?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know if you said I have a question or I have no questions.
I have a question.
Oh, so sorry, my hearing.
So
Yes, then you are totally acknowledged, please.
What I would like to understand, and I get it that the Chancellor's office and whomever is recommending or suggesting that we adopt a resolution regarding the spending, and I know. So what are we really saying is that we're not able to, or are we able to pay our bills as of this month?
We are able to pay our bills, but as administratively, we do not have authorization from the trustees to spend money after June 30th. So the second bullet point is giving us that authorization to spend between July 1st and the date that the board approves the tentative budget.
Thank you.
This is an authorization that normally the tentative budget approval would have provided you, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
That's why we always rush to get it done in June.
Okay.
So we could have that authority.
So Tammy, please.
That seems awfully tight, only from July 1st to July 15th, especially when the budget was not going to be created or approved till August 1st. Why don't we give ourselves the whole month of July?
We could, but the board needs to adopt the tentative budget. So at the July board meeting, we'll present the tentative budget, and then at that point, you'll adopt it. We have to have, under the new dates, August 1st, we have to file it up at the top. It states the tentative budget from July 1st to August 1st.
Oh.
So we have to have everything on file by August 1st, and we can put the tentative budget together for the July meeting. And I'm not quite sure, but I believe Dr. Anajonas was going to have a budget workshop at the July meeting.
Yes, absolutely. There was going to be a workshop as part of the meeting that night. for Dr. Bush to go over all of the parts of the budget and how we've put together the tentative budget. So there'll be much more explanation that evening at the board meeting. And just for your own edification, since this is the first time you've gone through this process, if this were a normal year, we would do a tentative budget in June based on whatever budget information we have. And then we would always do the final budget in September. However, that is always premised on the idea that people pay their taxes by April 15th. But because the tax date got pushed to July 15th, it meant that there was no way for colleges to pass a tentative budget right now because the governor hasn't even signed the budget. He must do so under the Constitution by next Monday, but we don't even have enough information to build a budget right now. So normally it would be a June and September. And so now it's July and October.
Right.
But
There's,
but in all honesty, to Tammy's point, in the totally unlikely event that the board could not come to resolution on the tentative budget on July 15th and wanted to call a special meeting,
you could
in a week or two to resolve because there was some issue, the fact that this resolution carried you to July 30th would help. And as soon as the tentative budget is approved, it supersedes this and it wouldn't hurt.
right.
So
We could change that date. I kind of fudged it. I said likely to be. But what the board is approving is that it would not, we'd have temporary, that authorizes spending and to the date the board adoption of the district's 2021 tentative budget, whatever date that is.
and that would even be more appropriate, it seems to me.
Okay. But because it was so wishy-washy, I kind of said likely.
So,
So we could strike that likely part if you'd like.
yeah,
So what I would say is somebody could make a motion to recommend approval of the continuing resolution with the amendment that likely will come out of the continuing resolution.
So then it has to be passed. So then there is no option for additional discussion after July 15th.
No, there is, because we could have a special board meeting. We only need 72 hours to call a special board meeting. So if on the 15th, you all were not in agreement or you felt like you needed more information, we could call a special meeting.
so I would entertain a motion, to Tammy's point, that recommends to the full board this resolution, striking the whole parenthetical comment likely to be July 15th, 2020. And just say until such time as the board approves the tentative budget. That's giving you the greatest parameter possible to operate the district in the unlikely event that July 15th doesn't work out according to plan. And it seems very simple to me.
Does that work for you, Dr. Bush?
That works.
Yeah,
Okay.
so would one of the members be willing to entertain that motion that we recommend this to the full board with that parenthetical clause being removed?
I'll second
So
that.
moved.
Okay, Tammy moved and Berlinda second. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, we got to do roll call votes. So Trustee Silver,
Aye.
Trustee Brown,
Aye.
Trustee Martin, aye. So that will be our recommendation to full board. And maybe that did help you a little bit bringing it up here first so that if something were to go wrong. I think we can then move to item 4, which is our budget update. And I'll assume that Dr. Androgenis wants me to hand it to Dr. Bush.
I absolutely do.
Thank you. Earlier today, I sent a letter from the chancellor's office which I'd like to walk everyone through a comparison chart. It is the state legislature has departed ways with the governor as on the state budget in two significant areas. First is in the area of health services, and then in the area of education. The legislature has taken a radically different approach. The legislature assumes there will be federal money, where the governor assumes there will not be federal money, and if it arrives, he'll reverse reductions and deferrals. So the first line is the reductions the governors may revise has 900, and this is just for the community college portion, 925 million of reductions and deferrals for the 2021 fiscal year. The legislative proposal with federal funding assumes no reductions to Prop 98. And if the funding doesn't come through, there's nearly 700 million in community college funding that's deferred to the future years. So as I explained last time, that's where we recognize the revenue, but we do not receive the cash to the next year. The governor.
And just as a quick reminder, Dr. Bush, are we a 2% rule here where whatever the number is for community colleges, we're 2% of it? Is that the ballpark?
Yes.
So is that 14 million for us? Is 700 million quickly turned into 14 million for PCC under the simple?
Yes.
Okay.
And keep in mind, this is not the deferral from the 1920 year. I'll get into that. All in all, of total deferrals, if there is not federal relief, will be $1 billion. So we'd be looking at about 20 million. The next significant thing, it does not provide a COLA, and it reduces the student center funding formula. The legislative proposal fully funds the student center funding formula and includes a COLA. And it assumes without federal funding, there is sufficient funds to continue funding the COLA, which is currently at 2.31. That's significant in that we do have collective bargaining agreements that have passed through a COLA that the board has already approved. So it would impact our employees' salaries. Here's the first deferral of the 1920 to the 2021. The legislature also has that in. They have it at 32 million. And this is an accounting trick to keep Prop 98 at the minimum funding level, because if they increase that, it'll be forever increased. So they want to maintain the floor. If the federal funding doesn't come through, it's going to be the 332 plus the 674 we already talked about. So it reduces governor reduces student equity achievement program by 15%, and that, remember, the strong workforce was reduced by 51%. The legislature rejects those ideas. They're going to have flat funding on all categorical programs. That defers funding to certain categoricals for future years. That is, the wording on that's troubling to me because they're using the word funding. So I don't know if they're just deferring the cash or if they're actually deferring our apportionment to a future year. And we'll have to see the actual language of the laws, the Budget Act, to figure that out. This is a big difference between the chancellor's office and the governor as opposed to the legislature. The chancellor's office continues to support the Calbright College, the online college, and the ledge analyst did a fairly scathing review of the college and recommended eliminating it. And both the Senate and the Assembly concurred and are eliminating the Calbright College. The governor wants a greater coordination and transparency of state technical assistance funding through a system support program. That's where the chancellor want to consolidate a lot of programs into a new office and coordinate everything out of the new office. And that has been rejected by the legislature. The governor withdrew all proposals on food insecurity, and the legislature has put 11.4 into food insecurity. And it will remain even if the feds do not support. The governor reduces a part-time faculty categorical by 15%, and the legislative proposal adds an additional 10.6. So the governor's has no enrollment growth, which has been a concern for the system for colleges, because traditionally during a recession, we have a higher need. Our workload tends to go up. So the legislative proposal has added some money for enrollment growth. The governor provides ongoing support for immigrants' legal services through the Cal States and UCs, and so does the legislative proposal. Governor moved the Dreamer Resource Liaison Program to Student Equity and Achievement Program, and the legislative proposal funds it outside of our C grant. So those are the main differences of the budgets. Another surprising thing that occurred is that the Assembly and the Senate agreed on a budget, and they each passed the exact budget, or are queued up to pass the exact budget, which means then there would be no conference committee. Traditionally, you have an Assembly, you have a Senate, you have a governor's proposal, and they call it the Big Five, where they get together in a conference committee, they iron out the differences, they all agree, and they move forward. So there will not be a conference committee this year. However, in good faith, both the Senate and the Assembly are meeting and negotiating with the governor about the different budget proposals. The governor has a lot of authority when it comes to the budget. First, he can accept the budget and sign it. He can line item veto items in the budget and sign it, or he can reject the entire budget and send it back to the legislature. And if that occurs, then under current state law, the legislators and their staffs will not be paid until there's a point where the governor signs the budget. So these are high drama negotiations going on, a lot at stake, and everyone's pretty tight-lipped about it. However, on the 15th, they are going to have to vote and send a budget to the governor. So we really don't know what numbers we're using, final numbers we're using to build the tentative budget, but we will know very quickly, and head vendor staff will generate the tentative budget quite quickly. We've been working on all the expenditure side, but we don't know the revenue side at this point. So in a matter of weeks, we went from needing to cut 10 million to getting about 2.8 million in additional revenue. So what it is concerning about the deferrals, but as I was lamenting over how can you defer that much money? That's more money than anyone has ever deferred. Even if you remember when they were stacking up those deferrals, Arnold Schwarzenegger and then Governor Brown took them over and took 3 years to pay them off. This is massive, this deferrals. However, it's cash. And one of the things the league has been working on, and I set through a presentation last week, is a tax revenue anticipation note, a trans, something this college really has not had to do in recent years because the strong cash position. And normally educational institutions have a low in cash in December. And then they're waiting for apportionment of property tax, and in January they're fine on cash, but there'll be a negative point. So they have a tax revenue anticipation note where we borrow cash and then we deposit it at the county treasurer, and during those points of negative cash flow, we use those funds. And then we pay it back within 6 months. Current rates for a trans is 0.5% right now. And so the concept that the league's working with Morgan Stanley with is that we would do a year-end trans where we would get the money, say in March, and we carry it through till October, and we'd have the cash for that deferral from May and June leading into the next fiscal year. 0.5% on 20 million is a lot cheaper than, and we also make arbitrage on the months when we're not using the cash. So it would be better to have between 100 and 200, say if it goes all the way up to 1%, by then it'd be $200,000. So, which sounds a lot to pay for an IOU from the state, but that's better than a $10 million cut. So we would, in our tentative, be putting aside money to pay for that because it would have to come out of the general fund. So that's one of the strategies we're looking at if they do adopt the Senate and Assembly. And then of course, if the federal relief funds come in, we will not need to go to get a trans.
May I have a question, ask a question?
Please.
Sure.
So I actually did not want to interrupt you, but you mentioned earlier when you referred to the COLA.
Uh-huh.
I know that we just adopted our, or we're in the process of our negotiation, and we did agree to 2-point-something COLA, right? And now what I'm asking is, you mentioned that if we don't get a COLA, it's going to impact the employees' pay. How would that work, and how hard, what are the ramifications of that?
Okay. And this is Bob Alinsky's area, but my understanding of the contract from a financial standpoint is the contracts have for future years a pass-through on COLA. So if the state funds zero, then it's zero to the employees. If the state funds 2%, I believe it's 2% to the employees. So, and I don't have the contract language in front of me. So yeah, if the state includes a COLA, our bargaining units will get a increase of the COLA. They'll get a cost of living.
Well, I thought we had already agreed to pay the employees for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
COLA, correct?
And we did.
This is future years.
Okay, so we're okay. Their
This
salaries
year.
will be okay for this year.
Yes.
Next year it will be okay. That's what I wanted to know.
And I think a lot of folks were resigned that next year there was not going to be a cost of living, but that appears to be changing with this Assembly and the Senate. That there would be a cost of living pass-through.
Mhm.
And I believe the agreement's 3 years.
I believe, yes, a total of 3 years. So there would be 2 more years. Yeah.
The current year, which has already been
Year counts as one of the 3. So it's this year plus 2.
2 future years.
Okay, so I'm confused. So the port, well, I guess this is not your your area. So the COLA that was already negotiated,
Mhm,
it was in the 2% range.
mhm.
But next year, as far as I see, we're not going to be having, going to be according to the budget, there's going to be a negative in the COLA. So that's what I don't understand.
Okay, and I appreciate that. According to the governor, there would be a negative. According to the
Legislatures, they will be
the
okay.
legislature, the Senate and Assembly, there will be 2.3% increase. I think
Okay.
it's 2.31. So where it settles, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Got it.
Is that an area, Mike, where the governor can blue pencil? Can he sign the budget and then blue pencil in on a COLA item, or,
If it's written as an individual line item, yes.
but he can't, he can blue pencil any line item, but he can't eliminate a line item. I mean, reduce a line item.
Correct. He can't break apart an item.
Yeah.
He has to decide to eliminate the whole thing. And that's where in the past, especially Governor Schwarzenegger, they would combine certain budget items together. So it would survive blue pencils.
And one more question on the tax revenue anticipation that hopefully we don't have to get, but if we do have to get it, which I think we've done that before.
Mhm.
You said it's about like what, 20 million is what we will have to ask for?
Yes.
But is this where you were saying, Mike, that the league is putting together a pool that we would access?
Yes.
Okay.
We would join the pool. And my current strategy in looking at this, because sometimes we have to put the dominoes in place early, is around October, the league's going to ask who's interested, and we would say we're interested. And then we attend the meetings, and then we do all the cash flows and fine tune everything. And then sometime around February, if we were going to do it, there would be all the resolutions of that the board needs to approve for lending. That would have to go before the board. So we'll administratively stay close to it and then bring the board in at the appropriate time. And then it's possible, you know, with a compromise, it may come in something else.
Mhm.
And the other thing about the assumption there's going to be federal relief,
Right.
they've made assumption of how much that federal relief is going to be. So it may come in less. The other thing is, it's important to keep in mind that everyone's working off of projections in Sacramento right now. They won't know the actual tax revenues until July, when people file the income tax. And then they'll know how much money they really have. Maybe they end up with more money than they thought they would. Right now, everyone's fairly bruised, but this is on 2019 earnings. So we'll have to see where the actual tax receipts come in at. So even I'm anticipating every year between tentative and adopted, there's always changes because the state enacts a budget and there's little tweaks to different lines. And there's a difference in every adoption. We go through and compare the adopted to the tentative and why things changed. I'm anticipating some significant changes because they're only working off of projections at this point. Between our tentative, which you'll see in July, and then our adopted, which hopefully we bring in September. And then I believe it's due October 30th. So if we had to push it back, we could.
Right.
But we would hopefully have that done in September.
Yes, Sammy.
When you were talking, it occurred to me, are we making any provision for next year? Because people's incomes in 2019 were quite good. There was full employment. It's this year, 2020, which is next year, that's going to be hard hit.
Yes, yes. If you recall, when I was sharing some slides about the impact of the recessions and that this is not going to be a single year event. At a minimum, it's a 2-year. It's most likely a 3 to 4 year budget challenge for the district. And yes, we are planning and we're keeping that in mind. So, but given how Sacramento's reacting, it could be next year we're getting a pass and then it'll be the following year when cuts are in it.
It's really hard. Yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Does everybody keep their fingers crossed?
Yeah. I don't know if
We're in for a wild ride is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we'll get some numbers and then I think they will change on July 15th. And I think if the HEROES Act passes, just based on everything that I've seen, I'm just not convinced it's going to pass or get approved at the level that the House of Representatives passed. So, you know, and the priorities might shift around there. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Mary Aaron, were you going to ask a question? I noticed that you're not muted anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was any sort of political action that's taking place around this, or if there's a particular version the school is supporting.
Yeah, we are supporting through our lobbyists, we are supporting as much full funding for the college as possible. And we do not support Calbright. And we believe that
Right.
the $120 million that's been put there, especially the $20 million that they would get in ongoing funding, they currently have 400 students. So that's definitely it. We also believe that if the state wants us to keep our enrollments level, which makes sense because we know a lot of people need our classes, then one of the proposals that was out there was to cut the funding by 10%. And so that has also been on our advocacy, that it would be fully funded for the student-centered funding formula. Now, the student-centered funding formula for us is a little tricky because there are many districts out there who are really happy with the base of student-centered funding formula being 17-18, because for them, that was a hold harmless year and they played a lot of tricks and they got a really high allocation amount that year. What we've been advocating for is the student-centered funding formula being benched on 18-19, because that's when we should be fully funded. You know, if the student-centered funding formula is really about rewarding colleges for being successful, and we were very successful in that year, we should get that level of funding. So we're trying to do everything we can to get as much into our budget and to reduce the deferrals, because the deferrals function like a budget cut, even though theoretically we'll get the money at some point. The point is we have expenses now. We have students who need to be served now.
It's not the same amount of money when you get it 3 years later.
No, it's true. It's not the same amount of money, which is, we would like to get it back now. The problem is, as Mike explained, the folks in Sacramento are playing games with how much to fund out of Prop 98, because whatever they do, it's going to set a bar. And so they're trying to figure out what to do. I think the other piece of this, which we really haven't talked about, is that obviously we're in Prop 98 with K-12, and there is a push at the state level for K-12s to go back face-to-face in the fall. And there's rhetoric out there. I've seen press releases by the governor saying, yeah, definitely go back. We're going to make sure you have testing. We're going to make sure you have all of these things, small class sizes. Well, we've all been around long enough to know that K-12 class sizes have gotten ridiculous. You know, they can be anywhere between 35 and 45 kids in a classroom. But some of the rhetoric out there is that, okay, you're going to go back face to face, and you're going to have 15 kids socially distanced in your classroom. So if you look at that, think, okay, so the same class they paid for a year ago with one teacher, they now need 3. So my big concern about Prop 98 is that, you know, we're not as compelling sometimes as K-12 is. And given all of those expenses, that's what makes me worry the most, because of those promises and that push at the K-12. You know, it's just hard. And we're in a terrible situation to have to say, well, we don't want you to be funded because we want us to be funded. I mean, we all need to be funded. So
Right.
it's
Right.
tough. Yeah. But we really are trying to maximize what we, you know, it'd be great to get a COLA. It'd be awesome to get a COLA. So, you know, because it affects everything.
Mhm.
And we have a lobbyist working on our behalf in Sacramento.
Okay.
Other comments and questions? Well, okay. We're gonna grip the handlebars and hold on tight and see where it all goes, right?
Right.
We're gonna move on to item number 5, which is our meeting schedule.
So, Dr. Bush, did you have an idea of when you might want to hold the next, call the next budget, finance and audit committee meeting?
Well, I would like to do it in July before the July board meeting so we could go through the tentative budget.
So would you like to do it similar to this month, so that if our board meeting is on the 15th, that would make this meeting on July 8th?
That'd be great.
Trustee Martin, is that?
Yeah, I, like the rest of the members, are probably quickly glancing on their calendars to see what is July 8th at about this time mean for you. Does that look good? Oh, I see a thumbs up by the
All good.
high-tech Tammy Silver.
It's good.
And Berlinda is good, so I think that works.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. Mike, you'll be back, right?
Yes, I'll
Okay.
be back.
Yeah.
I promise to come back.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
If you don't, I'll hunt you down. Yeah.
So we're on proposed future agenda items.
Mm-hmm.
I'll open that up to the floor, but I do have a couple.
Okay.
I'll take a pause and let someone else take the first whack. Number 1 is approval of the minutes, which didn't make it onto this agenda.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry about that.
And I see Mary's with us I'm assuming taking minutes. So we
Right.
should probably approve a couple, both, June 10, and what was the last one? May 6, I guess. Can always approve the minutes, so that's not a problem. Item number 2, and it certainly doesn't have to be on the July meeting, and maybe there's at least an annual time, but it is nice to have some report on our PARS investment at some point in the process. So again, if your hands are full for July with obvious things, I don't remember the last time we had it. I think it was a couple meetings ago. I think we could wait a couple meetings, but we should make sure that we queue it up on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be anything long. It just needs, I'm sure our investment advisors have a monthly or quarterly report they give you anyway. So if you could put
It
that
comes
on
quarterly.
quarterly, yeah. So it's not like we need to talk about it or review investment policy or anything, but it's nice to get a quarterly report on it, maybe when we have these meetings.
Okay.
Okay, any other future agenda items from the floor? Okay, so as we began this meeting with a light cartoon that I was given by a friend of mine, and I think Berlinda was the one that missed it, where the professor in Back to the Future is talking to Michael J. Fox at the DeLorean and saying, rule number 1, don't set it to 2020. So Berlinda, after what we just heard tonight, make sure you take that with you. Rule number 1, don't set it for 2020.
Okay.
Anyway, so because what we heard just made it a little worse for wanting to set it for 2020 is the reason I bring the joke back up. So if there's nothing else, I think we're adjourned. I want to thank everyone. We did it in great time, and yet I feel very informed. I'm just trying to decide if I'm glad I'm informed or not, but
Exactly.
thank you all for joining us.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.